TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel's security establishment continues to maintain a heightened state of alert and is working to implement a string of measures in accordance with lessons learned from the past to prevent tensions from boiling over. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken asserts that he is not overly optimistic at the prospect of reviving the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz warns that if a nuclear agreement is not signed with Iran, Plan B will be activated. Israel's security establishment continues to maintain a heightened state of alert and is working to implement a string of measures in accordance with lessons learned from the past to prevent tensions from boiling over. A senior Israeli intelligence official who spoke with TV7 on condition of anonymity highlighted near-identical similarities between events that preceded Israel's defensive action against Islamist organizations in Gaza last year, namely Operation Guardian of the Walls, and the past couple of weeks. The intelligence official noted, however, that three preventative ingredients have thus far averted tensions from boiling over, including the professional conduct of Israeli troops, which averted so-called miscalculation, as well as civilian measures that include an increase in entry permits into Israel for Palestinians, both workers and worshippers that observe the month of Ramadan. Another mentioned factor includes the fact that the Islamist Hamas organization has yet to rebuild its military capabilities, and evidently its leadership feels unprepared to engage Israel in battle. Nevertheless, while a tense calm prevails, Israel's defense establishment is aware that any miscalculation could provoke another round of hostilities vis-a-vis the Islamist organizations in the Gaza Strip. In this context, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz, accompanied by IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Aviv Kochavi, toured the Gaza Division headquarters yesterday and were given a comprehensive situation assessment on the situation within the Hamas-controlled territory.
אני מסיים סיור והערכת מצב באוגדת עזה עם הרמטכ"ל, אלוף הפיקוד ומפקדים נוספים. אנחנו פועלים בכדי לשמור על השקט, ולצד זאת ערוכים באופן נרחב סביב כל מוקדי החיכוך וסביב הרצועה בכדי לספק ביטחון לתושבי הדרום. הכוננות שלנו נמשכת גם ביתר הגזרות בכדי להגן על כלל אזרחי מדינת ישראל. אתמול אישרתי מספר צעדים שיאפשרו את חופש הפולחן לפלסטינאים בחודש הרמדאן. לצד זאת אנחנו ממשיכים לפעול, לסכל כל ניסיון פיגוע באופן ממוקד. בנושא הזה לא יהיו פשרות. אם יישמר השקט, נוכל להרחיב את הצעדים ולהמשיך את חופש הפולחן בחג. היציבות היא הגורם שמאפשר ביטחון ומאפשר גם כלכלה טובה. אם נידרש, נפעל ונכה בטרור בכל מקום, בכל זמן ובכל אמצעי שידרש.
Alongside efforts to prevent terror organizations from exploiting the tense period to act against Israel, the Israeli defense establishment has also expanded on efforts recently in collaboration with both global and regional partners to bolster its readiness ahead of a future standoff with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Among others, a joint Israeli-U.S. naval exercise titled Intrinsic Defender concluded this week in what was referred to as the largest exercise between the Israeli and American navies in the Mediterranean, Red Sea, and beyond. In a written statement by the IDF spokesperson's unit, the 10-day exercise included simulations of naval combat, naval firing exercises, vessel protection, sabotage and neutralization of naval mines, search and rescue scenarios, and providing medical aid at sea. Commander of the Israeli Navy, Rear Admiral David Salma, highlighted that the joint maneuver enhances the operational reach and capabilities of the Israeli Navy and is significant for regional stability from a strategic perspective. It is important to note that the remarks by the Israeli Navy Chief of Staff were made at the start of the joint exercise, when the commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet visited Israel to oversee its launch.
I'm here in Tel Aviv to celebrate the kickoff of a bilateral capstone exercise between the Israeli Navy and the U.S. Navy that we commenced yesterday out of Eilat, where the Israeli Chief of Navy and I kicked off the exercise. For those who are not aware, just over 6 months ago, Israel was realigned from orientation U.S. European Command to the U.S. Central Command in this NAVCENT. And this is our first large exercise called a capstone exercise.
During the course of the Q&A session hosted by the Middle East Institute, Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, who commands the U.S. Central Command Naval Component, namely NAVCENT, which includes the U.S. Fifth Fleet, highlighted further three significant aspects to the U.S.-Israel relationship that present, quote, incredible opportunities.
There's three significant aspects to the relationship that really present incredible opportunities. One is the signing of the Abraham Accords, now 18 plus months ago. There's this shift, as I just described, in orientation and realignment of Israel to the U.S. Central Command, and in my case as a component to NAVCENT. And then I think it's fair to say there's an orientation among nations in the region of where the threat lies, and the most significant threat would be Iran and its proxies.
Admiral Cooper further underscored the chief threat to regional stability, including its components, which are currently undergoing mass proliferation.
It's well understood that Iran is the most serious threat from a regional perspective. China is obviously the pacing threat from a global perspective.
Yep.
And from Iran, that threat manifests in different ways. There's the nuclear component, there's the ballistic missile component of it, including the massive growth in capabilities and numbers. There's a cruise missile component, massive growth in capability and numbers. And there's an unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV component, including mass proliferation of those and increased capabilities, mass proliferation of all three of those. There's the proxy dimension of that. And then really on kind of a different level, there's the piracy component and smuggling.
The military advancements made by Tehran in recent years, which correlate with its increasingly aggressive behavior throughout the Middle East, have evidently not dissuaded the Biden administration from its declared aspirations to revive the 2015 nuclear agreement. Nevertheless, since the postponement of the talks in Vienna, Washington and Tehran have repeatedly stated that the ball is in the other players' court, since the U.S. refuses to remove the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, or IRGC, from its list of designated foreign terrorist organizations, without public guarantees that Iran will cease hostilities toward U.S. and partner forces throughout the region, a prerequisite the Ayatollah regime refuses.
Well, I don't know that this is what you might consider a genuine kicking of the ball back and forth. And I say that because anyone involved in the talks knows precisely who has made constructive proposals, who has introduced demands that are unrelated to the JCPOA, and how we reached this current moment. That said, it has been our consistent position. We won't negotiate these issues in public. We still believe there is an opportunity to overcome our remaining differences.
Price further stressed that benefits for returning to mutual compliance with the 2015 nuclear agreement would soon diminish to a point of no return, which would force Washington to consequently turn to a so-called Plan B. It is important to highlight that U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in an exclusive interview to the U.S. headquartered cable broadcast MSNBC, acknowledged that the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps is in fact a terror organization, and stressed further that he is not overly optimistic at the prospects of actually getting an agreement to conclusion, despite all the efforts that the U.S. put into it, and despite the fact that the U.S. security would be better off. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz was joined by Foreign Minister Yair Lapid for a diplomatic security briefing for 80 foreign ambassadors to Israel, during which they presented the foreign dignitaries with an overview of the Negev Summit and the importance of regional security and economic cooperation. While Foreign Minister Lapid asserted that the Negev Summit is the right model for regional cooperation to fight terror and strengthen diplomatic ties which will guarantee regional stability, Defense Minister Gantz provided some raw intelligence data on Iran's latest nuclear advances, including the fact that over the past year, Iran rose from 10 kilograms of enriched uranium of 60% purity to 50 kilograms. Jerusalem's top defense official continued by warning that there is no vacuum when it comes to Iran's nuclear advances, stressing that if a nuclear agreement is not signed, Plan B will be activated. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's daily prayer initiative, I would like to continue to encourage you to truly persist with prayer for the situation involving both Russia and Ukraine, for their people's salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, in addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Tov U'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.